been doing the weekly meets for a while due to the Ramadan month in Turkey, because our program was just conflicting with the iftar hour. So what we decided to do is to postpone it till to the end of Ramadan after Bayram. But I have such a special friend and a special guest. So she was with us before, as you know, in School of Politics, when we first see pandemic situation, and she joined us from her country. So now we are together with, as I said, a distinguished diplomat, distinguished politician, and a great friend, Karin Kneissl. She's the for a former foreign minister, for me always, of course, the former foreign minister of Avusturya. So she is a great friend of Turkey. And today, actually, we will be talking about something which is interesting, not only for people who are working on that subject, but as a matter of fact, this is going to be the future of the world, the past of the world, and today's world. So the topic is energy. So welcome everyone once again to Bahçeşehir University's program, which is organized by the graduate school. Now, before everything, Minister Kneissl, I would like to ask you this question. In Europe, especially, everybody has been talking for a while about the Green Deal. Not only Europe, even my expertise is American politics. And when I'm focusing on the American politics in the former elections, the last elections we just passed through, President Biden and President Trump during their campaign, they were fighting about the issues. And one of the top points was actually energy issue. And Biden was more into the clean energy, the green energy deal. President Trump was more talking about still the famous Texas pipeline. So even in domestic policies and the domestic politics of several nations, this issue becomes such an important thing. So I'm going to open today's topic with two main questions. One of them is, what is the role of energy in the world today? Besides the parts we already know, what can we say about this? And definitely, to be frank with you, I live in Turkey for over 40 years. And in my country, I remember during my childhood times, a lot tough and a lot warmer and a lot colder winters and summers. But it is strictly changing. I mean, in some months, we have been living a month like we never lived before. It is warmer than ever, or sometimes in some parts of the world, colder than ever. I mean, it's changing. It is going weird, to be frank. So what happens is the green energy, the Green Deal becomes very important as a matter of fact. So my second question is, obviously, especially in Europe, what is the plan and what is the program of the Green Deal?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you also to your colleagues with whom I had a very nice correspondence in preparing our tonight's debate. And good evening to each and everybody, and wishing also a blessed Ramadan. And thank you for joining us at this hour. Let me start by the following. Because you asked me energy as the topic and renewable energy as such. I always tell audiences, if you want to understand geopolitics and international relations, put on a pair of glasses and call this pair of glasses the oil market. And in the reflection of these glasses, you will understand why there are alliances, why there are confrontations. And actually the entire 20th century, ever since the end of World War I, has been very much shaped by oil interests, by concessions, by fighting for oil. And oil was then gradually replaced also by gas interests. Having physical access to certain gas fields, gas went global, not only on pipeline transport, but the liquefying of gas, so gas being transported by ships, just like oil could be transported by ships. This time turned the gas market from a regional market being connected by pipelines to a global market. And these two forms of energy, together with coal and wood, biomass as such, also to a larger extent, you can subsume this under the fossil forms of energy. Fossil types of energy, in particular oil, have a higher density in energy. So with 1 liter of oil, you can of course produce other forms of energy. What did the oil market lead to? To a tremendous increase in transport, easier transport. Transport in today's world is still running on oil. We can produce electricity by all other forms of energy. It can be nuclear, it can be wind and solar. Problem with electricity is how to stock it. Oil you can stock, gas you can stock, wood you can stock, but electricity you cannot stock. Electricity has to be fed into a grid all the time. And when we speak of the Green Deal and renewable energy, we speak actually of an electricity market. So here it's all about different forms of electricity to be generated. And these forms of electricity can be generated, for instance, by wind farms, by solar panels, by some also thinking in the world of hydrogen, and maybe other forms. Problem is, and this will be one of my core messages tonight, and also some question marks regarding the Green Deal, is the actual challenge is not the making, the generation of energy. The real issue is how to distribute it, how to have the structure for the provision of energy, the grid, the electricity grid. And the grid that we have inside Europe actually goes from Anatolia to Morocco. It's one huge transnational grid. So whenever there's a problem in this grid, and the current problems we have inter alia, not only, but inter alia on an increasing level in Germany. Why Germany? The German government decided about 10 years ago, in March 2011, to move out of nuclear and to move out more and more of other forms of fossil energy. So gas stations are closed, coal stations are closed, oil has not been such a motor for energy. The challenge with the Green Deal is how to provide the grid, the infrastructure for all that electricity that you need to feed in. And here, the current big issue is transport, mobility. How will mobility be organized over the next decades? The Green Deal is the big issue of the current Commission. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is very, very committed to that topic. My criticism is, and I'm looking forward here also to the debate with the colleagues, is who will invest and who will make sure that the electricity grid as such is functioning. I will stop in a minute. Just let me give you two figures which are maybe interesting for our debate. 10 years ago, in June 2011, the German government, also under Angela Merkel, announced 1 trillion euros of investment in electricity highways. They wanted to construct a new grid of about 3,000 kilometers to provide from the German wind farms in North Sea to bring electricity to the south. Actually, not a kilometer was built. Why? Because you have a tremendous bureaucratic work to do. It's a huge administrative issue. So Germany right now produces a lot of renewable energy, but to distribute it to the people. And the big issue with mobility and electric car, which is considered as some sort of magic solution, take Tesla as the model for this magic solution. Here, the big issue is when you will bring millions of electric cars into a grid, which in my assessment, and I'm not the only one, is already rather fragile. What does that mean to the grid? What does that mean for a possible blackout? So to be a bit provocative, we are oscillating between a Green Deal on the one hand and a blackout on the other. There are warning voices which say if we move into the Green Deal at the pace that is currently advanced, without providing all the structure, without having enough gas as a backup. You need always gas as a backup because there are days when the sun doesn't shine, when the wind doesn't blow. So you need some other form of backup, which you can turn higher and lower in order to keep the balance in the electricity grid. And this is the big issue.
Okay, now let me come to this question, which is important for us. Now, I remember 90s when the Cold War is over. When the Cold War is over, everybody was asking this question, especially in Europe, in the United States, definitely Turkey, Greece, all the countries who are member of NATO, who have serious alliances with European countries and United States of America. Now, the question was this, okay, with Europe, the trade for Turkey is, usual thing. We still do our trade volumes almost 50% towards, European countries, especially with Germany. Now, when you move on, America and Turkey did not have such a great trade relationship, which I believe still not enough, according to the populations. So everybody was asking these questions. Soviets are gone. So now what's going to be the next step of the alliance between these countries? So the first immediate response from the academics, from the politics, diplomats was energy is going to be the new source, and energy deal, the energy pathways, the energy logistics, the energy security, the energy's rightful, peaceful, and also equal distribution is going to play a very important role, and Turkey will be a serious hub between these countries, and definitely it's going to be the new role of Turkey. Now, I know you have a little presentation, if I'm not mistaken, and which includes the hub issue and Turkey too. So my third question, if you can explain with your, slides, that will even be great. And I am assuming you are, or my friends are going to put the slides.
Yes, your colleague.
My colleagues. Okay, I would like to ask my colleagues to put the slides. I hope everyone can see it, and I'm checking from meanwhile from the YouTube.
Thank you.
Let me see if we are all okay on this.
Yeah, I see the first slide.
You do? Okay, let's go.
Maybe we can immediately go to the first slide, second slide. Thank you. These are some quotes. You can distribute it then. Of course, whoever wants to have it can have it. I don't want to stop on that too much. It's some of current quotes, very topical. Where does the Green Deal stand? And here, let me just give you one small message, which we can debate later. According to the current legislative elements decided by the European Commission and having made normative for the 27 member states, no investment, and this is really a very harsh directive, should be undertaken.
Ms. Kneissl, I have been getting from our students that we are frozen, actually.
We are frozen. Okay.
Okay, do you think we can fix it? Okay, let's do it. Okay, distinguished students, technical problems, which most probably myself and Minister Kneissl won't understand how to solve it. So in the background, Mustafa is doing his best to solve that thing. So in a couple of minutes, Karin Kneissl she's going to talk about her slide as soon as Mustafa is going to put it on screen. Ne durumdayız Mustafa? Okay, we still have 2-3 minutes to do that. So I will just quickly ask you a mini question in order for us to fix the slide issue. My question is this. Now, when we look at the Second World War, we see the Alsace-Lorraine issue, and your country was pretty much in the middle of these Alsace-Lorraine wars. I mean, if our students doesn't know it, which I'm pretty sure all of them does, it's about the coal, it's about the energy. So when you look at the issues in the Middle East, it's all about the oil, especially like 80s, 90s, 2000s. So distribution of the energy, the security of the energy, and so on and so forth. Do you think these things are going to be affecting the global security and how to handle the energy issue, the distribution of it, the peaceful distribution of it, without affecting the prosperity and the balance of the world? Do you think it can be manageable?
No, I don't think that it can be manageable in terms of a planned management, you know, because there is no planned management. We really have a rivalry between those who have a tremendous need of energy, and this is the so-called Northwestern Hemisphere, stretching from Canada to Japan, and of course, most of European countries. You know where you have the highest per capita energy use in which country? As a guess, it's the United Arab Emirates. They have the highest use of per capita energy use. So you have certain places on the world map where you have a tremendous need for energy. Some of them are also producers of energy, like oil-rich Emirates. And on the other hand, you have a whole continent which has not access to affordable energy, which is Africa, which is Latin America. When you look at night on the electricity, you will see Africa as a so-called black continent because there is no electric light to be seen, while the so-called Northwestern Hemisphere is lit up, now taking out Alaska or certain parts of Canada. And when you take a country like China, China was self-sufficient in oil production until the year 1994. 7 years ago, China turned into #1 oil consumer. So oil consumer, #1. And you imagine that not even 20 years ago, it was still an oil producer. It was self-sufficient with its own oil production. And energy is the key to all sorts of development. That's a fact. When you look at the big macroeconomic works, whether you look at Karl Marx or whether you look at Adam Smith, to take two extremes, none of them wrote about energy because energy was not yet a topic. It was labor, capital, and soil. Because energy for hundreds of years was produced by human or animal labor. And it was only with the increase of mobility, in particular World War I, that we went into new forms of energy. Fossil energy, before, of course, we had coal industrialization. But energy as such, as a real factor in international relations, was not really taken serious. In your question, you mentioned end of Cold War, new topics, and energy got more and more into the center. So in today's world, yes, it's all about physical access to energy resources. When we say that right now there is this Green Deal, renewable energy is today not only a topic of price and demand, how to get it, where to get it, geopolitics, it has turned through the climate debate into a topic of complete change of lifestyle. If the Green Deal, as suggested by the Commission, is really implemented, in my assessment, it would have a dramatic impact also on how we run today's lifestyles. It would change lifestyle. And I think a lot of people are not yet aware. We have lots of people asking for Green Deal, climate change activities and so on, but they completely forget what that would mean in terms of lifestyle changes. We definitely would not be able to keep the lifestyle that we have in today's, which we consider as normal right now. So it's geopolitics, it's a price issue, and it means it has an impact on lifestyle. And this, we can speak about the Friday for Futures, Extinction Rebellion movement, oil companies turning into green companies. It's a topic on which we should spend at least 10 hours and not just 1 hour and a half. But I would like to give you some first food of thought. So for those who would like to read about this first slide, first message is, in today's legislation, this is 2 weeks old legislation of April 21st. Any kind of investment is only to be undertaken when it is CO2 reduction. So if today a bank starts an investment, whether it's a chocolate factory, whether it's a car factory, whatever kind of investment you have to prove by legal obligation that your investment amounts to CO2 reduction. In my humble assessment, this means first, tremendous new bureaucracy for investment. And number two, it will be very difficult to prove that. And I think that in the current situation of recession, of mass unemployment in many European countries, not only European countries, but social issues rising. Take India, take various countries in also on the American continent. So I don't know how under these circumstances that kind of restriction can really be undertaken. So this is my first message. Next slide, please. In today's world, our global energy use is still to a very large extent made by fossil. You have the biggest part of our energy mix in today's world is still coal. China, number 2 world economy, soon to be number 1. More than 60% of the Chinese energy mix is made up of coal. So any Green Deal issue, this is also pronounced often by the critics of the Green Deal, they claim there's a lot of restriction on the way for companies inside the EU, but what about huge companies sitting outside of the EU, such as in China or in India, where most of electricity is produced by coal and not by renewable energy. After coal, second on a level of global energy is oil, followed by gas. Gas has taken up over the years. This slide is a bit older. Gas is on the rise. And then you have nuclear, which is violet, and others. So if you want to replace fossil by renewable, you can see on that graphic, it means tremendous efforts, tremendous investments. And under the current circumstances, where we do not have a booming economy, where we have the situation that many of us know and face, I think, yes, you might call it ambitious and over-ambitious and so on. I think we should not forget about the social implications that the Green Deal has. Namely, let's take a very concrete example. Take a tiny company, they have 5 cars, 5 little trucks maybe, to distribute whatever they produce. If you oblige them to replace their 5 cars by electric cars, it means a tremendous investment for this company instead of driving their regular cars with a combustion engine. And these investments to prescribe, I think it will be difficult under the current circumstances. We are not in an anti-pandemic situation. We are in the middle and we still don't know yet what will come next. The limbo is there. So Mustafa, if I may ask you for the next slide, please. Here you see the different catchwords, if I may say so. The catchwords are beautiful, no doubt about that. Zero pollution, preserving the ecosystems, leave no one behind. Beautiful slogans. And you will see these slogans repeated and repeated by Mrs. von der Leyen, repeated by Commissioner Timmermans, Vice President Timmermans. But the big but is how to finance the whole thing and how to have this so-called just transition really done in a way of social peace. Maybe some of you have been following the protests in France 2-3 years ago, the so-called Yellow Vest protests. What was at the beginning of the Yellow Vest? An increase of the tax on oil for climate change sakes. I always say, in today's world, people do not go to the street and say, we are hungry, give us bread, like in the revolution of 1917 or in the revolution, take an older one, 1789, French Revolution. It was all about bread and hunger, hungry people. In today's world, people might trigger a revolution because they say, give us our daily car. You know, we want to afford mobility. If you take away mobility, if you take away our means of transport, we are out of our jobs. And we have seen it in several countries where you have subsidized petrol prices, for instance. In many countries, you pay taxes on your gasoline, gas. But in other countries, you have subsidized prices. And where the subsidies were cut, it triggered the one or the other social momentum. Some made it happen. But I think if transport, mobility, the car as such, gets out of reach for the average person, that's where in today's world, you will have a higher risk of social unrest than some people have fully understood. So my next slide, please. Here we come to the graphic material that you, Professor Kundai, just mentioned. Turkey is not an energy producer, wishes to become one in the Eastern Mediterranean. I won't go into the Levant Basin issue between Israel, Cyprus, Lebanon, etc. This is another huge issue. But let me focus on today's situation. Turkey being up ever since the end of the World War at the very center whenever it comes to Eurasian security as such. Turkey is, so to say, the hub, the bridge between the big oil and gas producers, gas becoming more and more important, and the still big consumers. But let me be here prudent. The EU market as such will not remain the big consumer in the long run. The big consumers of energy are in the East, not in the West. And this has demographic reasons, this has economic reasons, but of course it also has the Green Deal reason. Because if you're not anymore allowed to use gas, to use oil, so you will have to stop being a client of the big oil and gas producers. So, I will go into a very clear detail on the next slide, South Stream and Nabucco. Let's skip that one, just to go to the next one. This is, here you see the pipeline network. It's a map taken from Le Monde Diplomatique, from east going west, and also from north going south. You see here Turkey's role as a hub, as a center stage for different pipelines. One of the famous pipelines you all are familiar with is the Baku-Tiflis-Ceyhan pipeline, which led also to several changes in the Caucasus. I mean, various conflicts, new alliances, etc., which happened in the first 20 years of 21st century, were very much interconnected with the Baku-Tiflis-Ceyhan pipeline. We have South Stream, Turk Stream, on which I will speak in a second. And when we also had, of course, the so-called Nabucco project, which always remained a project, never became a real gas pipeline, which was supposed to bring gas from all sorts of countries like Azerbaijan, Iran, Iraq into the West. It was a huge project, but I never trusted it and it never materialized. But let us move to the next slide very briefly and look at this project. Maybe some of you are following the so-called Nord Stream 2 debate, which we can still discuss later on if there's time. The idea behind Nord Stream is to bring gas direct from Russia to the European market without going through Ukraine and Poland. That Nord Stream pipeline was started in 2005, became operative in 2011. In 2014, another project was started in the south called South Stream. South Stream was to be complementary to Nord Stream. And the idea of South Stream was just like in the Baltic Sea, in that case, to bring gas from the Russian Federation to Bulgaria, to an EU country. 2014, you remember, March 2014, the Crimean crisis, fighting started in eastern Ukraine. What happened? Different rounds of sanctions against the Russian Federation and the stopping of South Stream. South Stream was supposed to be started on the 1st of June 2014. Everything was ready. Labor contracts were ready. The material had been bought. Tens of thousands of people between Serbia and Bulgaria were ready to work in that project. Due to pressure from all sorts of sides, Bulgaria had to refrain from that project because it would have been, so to say, the immediate geographical partner. Corporate partners were Italian Eni and some other EU-based oil and gas companies. The Russians waited for some time, and after about I think it was 9-10 months later, President Putin said, okay, South Stream, we had to accept, it will not materialize, but we have everything ready on the Russian side in terms of a hub, of a port, of a refinery and so on. Let's bring the gas that we wanted to bring west to Bulgaria into the EU. Let's bring it south to Turkey. And you had Turk Stream. So now EU countries are trying to bring that gas instead of direct connection via Bulgaria, via Turk Stream into their market. Turkey has increased its role as a Russian partner because of the cancellation of the South Stream project. And here, the interesting concept between Moscow and Ankara is that despite the fact that both states are waging war against each other, are confronting each other in Syria, in Libya, they are close partners in energy projects such as Turk Stream and others. And this is quite interesting because you can see how you have a combination of conflictual aspects and very dense cooperation, because pipelines, you don't construct them for 5 years or 10 years, you construct them for decades. So whenever you have a pipeline connection, it means a longer cooperation for the sake of transit. Mustafa, if I may ask you for the next, please. This is a very old map from Le Monde Diplomatique from 1998, but I always like to use it because it gives a different view on the globe. It's not this Eurocentric, showing Europe often as being much bigger than actually it is. The cartographer of this map, Filip Rekakiewicz, he used to be for many years the cartographer of the French. You can see how the center of gravity already 25 years ago was the Pacific. And it's in the Pacific that I always say the music is playing, that energy consumption is main place, energy production, and the pandemic has only accelerated something that started 25 years ago. The economy that walks out best equipped of the current crisis is, for the time being, the Chinese economy. And that will have a tremendous impact on what will happen to various EU countries and their industry. Which industry will survive? And here I will move to the next slides and be very brief because I don't want to take too much of your time. The last big industry that is left in the European Union is the automotive industry. It's the car industry. It's for about 8 million persons are employed. And when I say Europe, I mean far beyond EU. You have Belarus, you have Serbia, you have Bosnia-Herzegovina, where you have supply lines for the German automotive industry. Where is the future demand for cars? I always say, like on the iPhone, it says in the back, when you open, you see the inscription, designed in California, assembled in China. My thesis is, on the car in the future, it will say, designed in China, assembled in Africa. Because the future demand for cars will be on the African continent. There you have the market. And the car producers of the future will neither be the Germans, nor the French, nor the Americans, in my assessment. I've written a book on that, which was published last year called Mobility in Transition. It will be, to a large extent, Asian car companies. I cannot tell you what kind of engine they will use. Will it be a sophisticated combustion engine? Will it be something completely new? I am skeptical about the electric car. Maybe we will see some sort of Steve Jobs in an Asian country who invents something completely new, you know, like Ericsson was overtaken by the touch screen. You could also see some technical innovation that will change mobility to a large extent that we cannot imagine right now. But right now, we also see the pandemic has brought back the car. People hesitate to take public transport, to take the car. And the car also, and I'm speaking here for examples that have been studied, even empirically over the last few months, the car is considered as being more secure for sanitary reasons, you know, and also the car is where you still have some sort of liberty left. And the car was always the liberty, you know. Car was always about, you can listen to the music you want, you can discuss the topics. I've been to various countries where you shouldn't, better not talk politics in the coffee shop. So, but you can discuss politics in the car, where you can meet, where you can have your, whatever, your liberty. And this pandemic has brought back the car also as a symbol of liberty to a large extent. Being able to not wear a mask, for instance, because you're sitting in your car. The next, please. And this is already the last ones. This picture I took in the Automobile Museum in Torino, in Italy. I always like to go to car museums because it's always interesting also to see first of all, they're beautiful. And secondly, it also gives you a very interesting story of the economic history, of the social history of 20th century. Honestly, I didn't know when I stepped into the museum in Torino, in Italy. And you know, Torino is home to Fiat, the Agnelli. The Fiat was produced there. In 1909, so 5 years before World War I started, Torino had the biggest and most modern car industry in the world. Whenever you have a chance to go there, visit it. But unfortunately, it's old museum today. And you can still say where they where they had the racing ground on a roof. You could test the cars on the roof of the Fiat company. Fiat means Fabbrica Italiana Automobiliaria di Torino. And today it's a museum. And this has happened not only to Fiat. And my rather gloomy, I'm fully aware that I'm not the biggest optimist about the European Union industrial future when it also comes to mobility. The German car industry is the biggest car industry, Volkswagen #1, followed by, of course, the different mergers we have had between Italians and French, take Peugeot and Fiat, now working together. Fiat was with Chrysler, Mercedes in Germany, plus BMW. These are the big companies. My rather gloomy picture is the following. Many of these factories risk to turn into museums. And this is, I think, somehow a gloomy symbol for what might still happen to the last remaining industry that we have inside the European Union. The textile industry moved out. It quitted Central Europe. It moved to Turkey. It moved to China. It moved to Bangladesh. The chemical industry is still partially there. Electronics has moved out. We see it now, the dependence on chips and different devices which are somehow monopolized by certain countries in Asia. The car industry was still the technological edge. And let me give you here two remaining figures that I think are very interesting. 60% of Volkswagen sales are made in Germany, in China. 60% of Volkswagen are sold in China. On the overall topic of German car industry, it's 30% that are sold in China. So the German car industry would not survive without the Chinese market. And if the Chinese manage to have their own status symbol that people are not making fun of, like you had in previous car shows, when when consumers said, well, this is not what we really would consider a car that gives us the emotions, that gives us the status that we're looking at. But the moment they manage to have this kind of emotional and status momentum, produced at very low costs, produced maybe with a completely different engine, that will definitely be a very strong turning point for the role of Germany as #1 inside the European Union, with its excess export industry, being able to organize also economic topics inside the European Union the way they do, and also the cost of energy and the reliability of energy that you need in order to run an industry. This is another topic. So to sum it up, the Green Deal and the automotive industry, very strongly interconnected. The automotive industry having moved out, having its future for all sorts of reasons somewhere else, and being an enormous employer and enormous taxpayer for EU countries. And in all that, where's Turkey? Turkey as an energy hub, being more important for countries going east than, I would say, in the long run for the West. Many people have, I've always claimed that also in the past, it's not only airlines that are going east instead of west. I mean, the big airports are not in Rome, in Paris, in Frankfurt. The big airports are in Istanbul, in Shanghai, in wherever. The big airports are east. The big hubs for airline industry is going east. That has happened over the last 20 years. And pipelines have also turned east. Gas pipelines have turned to east. And I think that also this hub role of Turkey for the different pipelines that we have seen in the previous slide, in the near future, will have to turn more south and east than it's currently the state.
Thanks for your great presentation. It was so brightening, especially the last picture, by the way. I loved it and I want to go there. And I didn't even know the name of Fiat. I just learned it from you.
Italian fabric or it's the Fabrik of the Italian automobile of Torino. This is
Torino.
Yeah.
Excellent. So now we're going to return back to energy, obviously, but I have the foreign minister, the former foreign minister of Avusturya, right in front of me, and from political scientist to a politician. Just a quick question. When I'm teaching my student about the world history, the political history, the diplomatic history, we see that the civilization actually, in a mythical term, started in East instead of West, right? Mm-hmm. So all the innovations, for instance, whatever changed Europe is definitely the gunpowder, right? The gunpowder made a lot of changes in the boundaries of the Europe, even the conquest of America, capturing the lands in America, fighting the wars in Europe, fighting the wars in the Middle East. It's all about the gunpowder. The gunpowder is found in China. It was brought to the old world, as we call it, the European land. Now, the question is this. Later on years, we see that China was dropping. Middle East, including us, the Ottoman Empire, we were dropping about innovation, about science, and about inventing new things. Even the Central Asia, pretty much the east of Europe, the interland of the Europe, start not focusing on the innovations anymore. And after Reform and Renaissance movement with the Industrial Revolution, Europe start doing this. And now when you look at Germany's infrastructure and income and capabilities, the French, American, British, and even they do great cars in Torino. I just learned from you. Italians, Spanish, Portuguese, they did a good job to catch the technology. Now, you said something so important. You said that the best cars are going to be produced in China or Asia or Africa. Right? Now, this shows the path that for almost like a couple hundred years, the academicians have been teaching the order of the world. First, the balance of power, then with US and Soviets, bicameral system that manages the world. Then a bini-hegemon process with United States, a mono leadership. But now when you look at the world, as you said, China, a country, for a lot of people, it was seen like you have to get your stuff from China cheap and you have to sell it to Europe. But now, every time I go to China, I see that China is not only a production market anymore, but also a consuming market, as you just mentioned a couple of minutes ago. So you are not only talking about a nation or a geographic area that produces in a better, financial statements on the paper. But in addition to that, actually China now, especially China, there's a lot of other countries on the East, even India, about the technological materials, etc. They start producing a lot of stuff, a lot more quality than the Europe and United States. Now, I think, agree on this. So this is going to start definitely a political, economical, social, and in a way, strategical challenge between the geographies. As I said, besides the energy, how you are going to foresee the upcoming days of the new world order?
Well, I apologize to my EU compatriots, but I am not that optimistic about the EU remaining as the leader in technology in many fields that it has acquired over the decades. Let me start by another figure, which I always like to quote because it's so telling. 9 of 10 German companies that are listed on the German stock market were established before World War I. 9 of 10 companies. So we are still profiting from the brain, from the innovation, the researchers of
you did before.
Yeah. And
important example.
Yeah. So take any big German company, whether it's Mercedes, whether it's Diesel, you know, the Rudolf Diesel, whether it's Siemens, whether it's Bosch, BASF, all these companies were established in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. And in none of these companies today, you have the degree of innovation that you have in Asian companies, whether it's Hyundai, whether it's Daewoo, whether it's
Hawaii.
Hawaii, exactly. And there's another long list. So you said beforehand, you took the gunpowder example and the decline of China. China's refraining from going to the sea and insisting on doing its economic trade on the Eurasian plateau. And the rise of tiny countries like the Netherlands, like Portugal, tiny places, England, a tiny country, but those were the sea trading countries that established their power across their innovative skills they had in sea trading. And from a Chinese perspective, and I've only been teaching in China for 1 month many years ago, but I published 4 years ago a book which has the title in German. It's not unfortunately available in English, but I wrote some articles in English about it. The title of my book was Change of the Guard from a Transatlantic to a Pacific World Order. And the main thesis is a period that from a Chinese perspective was an exception is ending, namely that China is not number one. China is used to being number one. 19th century was the decline of China with the Opium War, with European presence in very nasty ways. Hong Kong, Shanghai, you know, these enclaves, these free trade zones that the British and the Dutch established. Today, China is the locomotive in various EU countries, whether it's Greece, whether it's Italy, whether it's Hungary, very much present there. And in the name of energy and in the name of mobility, which I think, as I mentioned beforehand, is a tremendously important topic for people. Health, of course, everybody's speaking about health now, but this is another huge topic. We spoke about it last spring. But I believe when you take away mobility from people, you take away something that is so much with us, you know, being able to move, whether we moved as Bedouins, nomads, whether we move as tourists, whether we move just with our ideas. So this wish to move is currently very much at stake under EU Green Deal restrictions that some voices are claiming, and you have certain parts of society, you have younger generations that theoretically say, yes, of course, we have to renounce on all that. But on the other hand, my observation as somebody who is 56, I believe they are not fully aware of what that really will mean for their lifestyle. Because they are used to a high per capita energy consumption, a very high one. And also using social media requires electricity. It's not that it's without energy. It requires a tremendous deal of energy. Dealing with Bitcoins requires energy. And there is no innocent form of energy. Every energy has a nasty aspect, a geopolitical one, an environmental one. And let me give one idea that we might discuss at the future stage. The elections in Germany in September, October will be very much a mirror of what we have just discussed. At least 30% of German voters might go into this kind of greenish idea, you know, not drive cars, better ride your bike, don't take the plane, don't use oil and gas, don't import Russian gas, etc., etc. And then you have another part that says, but come on, I mean, we have to live on something. We cannot just live on consultancy and haircutting and being lawyers, all of us. You will also have to have some part of work which is still into industry. And this will be this kind of competition of concepts of how economy, society could function, will be very much reflected in the German elections. And being an Austrian who has lived in Germany, we speak one language, German, having studied German philosophy. The concept of utopia is something very close to the German philosophical mindset, you know, utopian ideas. Marxism, utopia, it was developed in Germany by German thinkers. And many other ideologies, which I don't want to count them all now. Right now, I am sometimes thinking that what we face now in the energy, in the climate debate and so on, and I consider myself as somebody who lives rather ecological. I have my chicken, I do my stable work, I drive the bike, etc. But I don't want to renounce on complete mobility. I know the value of pushing on the light and having light and not just, you know, petroleum something. And I think there's some sort of utopia behind, as if you could be self-sufficient. No, we are not in the Middle Ages. We are not in 19th century. And in an interconnected world in which we are living today, with the desires people have in terms of lifestyle, I think it's a dangerous utopia if you think you can move out of all that and say we move out of all that dirty energy, but in the moment we risk a blackout, and we have high risks of blackout. We bring in nuclear energy from France. We bring in the gas from Russia. And there is an old dilemma which is very much reflected in what is, if I may say, the German soul, you know, from a philosophical point of view.
Okay, now let's come to my last two questions that I'm going to get from our friends in our last 20 minutes. But now energy and politics, I'm going to ask one, and the other one is absolutely politics. Then I'm going to go back to our students. Now, again, when I'm focusing on the United States elections, or some countries' elections in Europe, in Asia, in Middle East, in Africa, you see that there's a big conflict or conflict of interest, let's say, between the leaderships, while they are saying, if we sign this agreement about the environment, then the production, industrial production of our countries are going to drop down, the unemployment is going to start. So it is kind of impossible for us to sign this. And you see that one of the leading countries in the world, like not Soviets anymore, sorry, Russia, United States, even them, they are stepping away from signing these agreements. And when you ask them why, what's the problem with that? The main thing is, if you sign this, and unemployment and definitely a minus budget is going to be writing in our end of year papers, you know what I mean? So now there's still a dilemma between the decision makings of the countries thinking about the future or thinking about today. Obviously, as a humanitarian point of view, we always say, if you keep on doing this, there's not going to be a future. So we might be the last generation living in the world, and if it keeps on going like this, 2, maximum 3 generations later, God help them. So something had to be done right now about the energy, definitely. But on the other hand, the politicians usually say, if we do that, the economy is going to collapse. If we do that, when I mean that, it's the environmental, you know, signatures they have to put in order to save the future of the world in a environmental point of view, of course. So now, when we have a conflict like that in front of us today, how it is going to be solved, and how do you again foresee the upcoming days on that? This is the first question. Second one, I'm going to be asking after this.
Well, I think the fear of many is simply what will happen to their values. You know, value in terms of money that is there, but that could lose its value, whether it's through inflation or deflation. Both scenarios are possible, even a combination. So I think there is uncertainty, a tremendous degree of uncertainty, which path to take, going into more debts, not more debts, and it's very well reflected in the so-called rescue program, reconstruction program of the European Union. You have a more Italian, Spanish, French model, if I may say, versus a more Scandinavian, German, Austrian model of how to spend or not to spend, of how to do your budgets. And so it's still in the making. I cannot tell you whether going into all that debt business. I personally, the way I am, I don't like debts. I think there always comes a moment when you are asked to pay back your debts. And right now we have a printing press attitude that I consider dangerous. This is one thing. But going beyond this macroeconomic budget and fiscal issues, because everybody speaks about new taxes also, is another thing is how will the financial market as such be organized? Will it remain a globalized financial market where you can pay with your credit cards, Visa, Master, American Express, which are all US credit cards? Will you continue to pay with these? Will everybody continue to be part of the SWIFT, which is the main financial transaction tool? Or will, in the case of future sanctions, some countries be kicked out of the SWIFT, as was the case with Iran in the past, as the European Parliament asked in a resolution a few days ago against Russia? What does that mean? So how to solve that? I don't know. I only see uncertainty.
Second question. Then the students are going to go ahead. Now, things are changing in Europe. Brexit is definitely one of them. Chancellor Merkel, she's going to leave. Another thing. France is, yeah, I mean, about French, when I look at that as a political scientist, I saw a total different France during Sarkozy, totally different France during Holland, totally different France during Macron, more France during Chirac. So after Jacques Chirac, starting with Nicolas Sarkozy, later on Francis Hollande, and then Emmanuel Macron, France is shifting a lot. Some Eastern European countries are definitely start objecting, like Hungary, the situation in European Union. Some countries like Greece put their back to European Union, want to do their own agenda, it doesn't work out. So long word short, expansion is another question. After Maastricht 1992, we always talked as political scientists in the world, is it going to be like new United States of America? But it is seen that a little bit European Union stuck too much into the bureaucracy, and the decision-making become a serious problem in European Union administration. So long word short, the question is this: considering the economy, considering the managerial style, considering the new changes like Merkel and the Brexit and these kind of issues, and definitely considering the world, how do you foresee, last one, definitely the pandemic, and how the countries responded to that situation? How do you foresee the future of European Union?
Highly fragmented. I'm just trying to cross the borders from Austria via Germany to France. And it requires a high degree of organizational work, you know. there is not anymore this open border, not only due to the pandemic, it's due to many, many other topics, you know. And this was always considered as the big, big accomplishment of Europe, freedom of movement. So here we see a high fragmentation, we see a high deception, frustration of people, all the steps that you have to undertake to move from one place to another. When I go to Germany for work, for a conference, and I'm in Germany for 2 days, I have to sit in Austria in quarantine for 7 days. So, you know, it's a burden. And I am very, very worried that this huge accomplishment of what freedom of movement for people has met, and freedom of movement of goods is still there. Plus the mass unemployment that you have in many countries. The official figures are one thing, the unofficial or the figures still to come will be another thing. I think that this French concept of a Europe at different vitesse, you know, in concentric circles, this will come more quickly. We know it from Schengen, we know it from other topics that not everybody was, or the euro, not everybody is taking it. But here, I think we'll see more fragmentation.
Okay, now, one of the students' question, if the Green Deal, the green energy transformation happens, they believe, as I said, that's not my expertise, but our students are asking this question, couple of people, it is going to cause some unemployment due to the transformation of the job ability, right? So is Europe ready to sustain that job loss and transform it to another direction?
Very pertinent question, and I share the doubt that maybe others have. Very, 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 very difficult to assess. We have seen it with the moving already from job intense industry in other places. For instance, I remember when we had the Social Democrat Green government with Gerhard Schröder and Mr. Fischer in the early 2000s. They said that, I don't remember, 1 million or 2 million green jobs will be established. It didn't work out. The green jobs actually were sometimes cosmetics that a plumber, a regular plumber would also establish something that you can call a greenish, renewable. So not new jobs were established, but a sort of, it was more PR than very substantial employment. And so people have become doubtful about generation of employment thanks to innovation.
Now, another question from Sarah, one of my students again. She's asking, EU is most often referred to as the champion of the green movement and green growth. Are there industries that the Green Deal might give birth to in Europe?
It is considered as a champion, but in real matters, we are not anymore champion. Let me give you the example of the solar industry. The Chinese have conquered this market. The Chinese brought prices down, which enabled, for instance, countries in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa to have the solar panels because they didn't anymore have to buy the rather expensive made in Germany solar panels. So the entire photovoltaic industry that 20 years ago was considered as European technology championship is not anymore there. Others can do it as well and can do it at much lower prices. And that, I think, holds true for other areas as well. To be honest, and many people are not yet honest about it, maybe I'm too skeptical, but I try to be close to reality. We do not, when I say we in the European Union, not Germany, not France, in some areas maybe, but I can speak for Germany, having been at many, many conferences on that topic. We do not anymore have this technological edge, this leadership. Plus, and this is the big thing that the pandemic has also revealed, we are very, very much dependent on certain chips and other devices produced in Malaysia, in Vietnam, in India, and they're really missing today. They're missing in the car industry, for instance, also in the regular one.
Another question is coming from a student of us again, Emir Gürsu. Why? Oh, I'm sorry. I turned off my camera. Sorry about it. So now, Emir Gürsu asked this question. Does Europe agree that there are sources that can be substituted for nuclear energy and that more attention should be paid to them? Now, in addition to this question, I want to add a couple of things to Emir's question. Now, when we are talking about after, the famous atomic bomb was, exploded in Japan, it changed everything in two ways. One of them is the war technology. The second thing is definitely the nuclear energy is not only used as a, weaponry or the military cases, but in a lot of different ways. It is powerful, it is effective, it is resourceful, but on the other hand, as someone who lived during the generation of Chernobyl and lived this Chernobyl issue in Turkey, and I'm from the Black Sea region of Turkey originally. So everybody, I remember that day. So long word short, nuclear energy in the hearts of everyone who thinks about the future of this globe, who thinks about the environment, and who thinks about the safe energy, because green energy is, of course, considered also safe energy. But the big question is, like Emir just asked, moving from nuclear energy to a safer green energy deal is going to cost a lot. So the big question is Europe ready, or is the world ready to substitute this with another thing? And also one of other question that Hilal Tash asked, I'm combining these two questions. How will the European Green Deal be financed? So one of them is the transformation. The other one is the newly applicable systems, how it's going to be stood up and how it's going to be transformed, especially the financial point of view.
Yeah. Thank you for all those questions. Let me oppose secure when we know all what nuclear can cause as a disaster, whether it was Chernobyl, whether it was Fukushima 10 years ago, and Fukushima is far from being solved because they want now to dispose nuclear contaminated water in the Pacific. The Chinese are unhappy, many others are unhappy. I mean, it's not only that. It's not only about security. When I speak about energy as a consumer, as an analyst, I also want to know the reliability of energy. So the price, the security, but is it reliable? Is it available? And this is the big question mark with green energies. As long as we do not know how to transform it into some sort of stocking, it will always be difficult. The other issue of financing is a very big issue, and we do not yet have a clear-cut answer by the European Commission. A lot will be financed through taxes. So people are worried that they will have maybe pay the double or the triple for today's energy because of new taxation, whether it's taxing the car, the fuel, or whether it's taxing the electricity as such. Some are even claiming, these are now the big apocalyptic scenarios for some, that every citizen might receive some sort of CO2 account, will be taxed, or you will be measured according to your per capita energy consumption. And your per capita energy consumption could be not only how many kilometers you drive, but are you vegetarian? Are you vegan? Do you still eat meat? On how many square meters do you live? So here, the risk, and this is a big debate in Germany, is the Green Party has already pronounced we are against single family houses. So no more single family houses to be built. People should reduce their square meters. This is a big issue. And so the financing could be through a lot of prescriptions. Plus, one very clear announcement by the Commission in the Green Deal is the taxing of products that have a higher CO2 impact because they come, for instance, from India or China. And the moment they enter the EU market, they should be taxed according to the CO2 emissions that come along. And that could, of course, affect trade agreements, because that would be some sort of tariffs, trade tariffs. And that's why I remain fairly skeptical. I think the slogans that I showed you on one of the slides are nice. Nobody will contradict them. But how to materialize them, how to bring them into legislation that is really to be reconciled with people's daily needs. This is the big issue.
Okay, one last question of one of our students. They say, didn't the pandemic contribute to a slowdown of the Green Deal, or did it actually accelerate or help the process, since there was a serious reduction in carbon footprints, due to the lockdown, etc.? So, in order to open the question a little bit, the era we live in, the pandemic era, do you think it helped move towards faster to green energy, or the opposite way, slow it down? And the rest of the question, this is the last one, then we are finishing our great
very important question. Also, thank you to the colleague. When you read the published opinion, they will tell you, yes, of course, we did it with the pandemic. We will solve the climate disaster just with the same way, put everybody under lockdown, prescribe them what to do, and they will behave that way. I don't share that. I think people are not to be handled the way that we have seen on some occasions right now, and they will not continue to accept a lot of things. Plus, I think that the pandemic will actually bring back the car in many, many ways, as I prescribed beforehand, as a symbol of liberty. Because inside the car, for instance, you don't have to wear your mask. I mean, this holds true for public transport in many EU countries. You are supposed to be there. And I think that will stay. I would even go that far that traveling on plane, we will only do it with a mask. This I think, in public transport, these are things that will remain from the pandemic. Because the fear is there, the uncertainty is there. Mutations, variations, etc. So if you're sitting in your car, at least you have some sort of oxygen, in terms of the way you don't have to wear a mask. And this means a lot for some people. So I think that the car is actually turning more important for some. And in the case of many EU cities, you could see that taking public transport has decreased, taking the personal car has increased. And even during the lockdowns, and we had very rigid lockdowns in Austria in particular, and in France, very strong lockdowns. And you had huge traffic jams. Why? Because people preferred to take the car than sit in public transport. Those who had to work. Hospital workers, supermarket people, etc., etc. Those who are not working from the home office, who go to their work. So the traffic jams were there. Those who could afford to have a car and ride a car did it, and did not go to public transport.
Madam Minister, Karin Kneissl, the former Foreign Minister of Avusturya, but more than everything, I'm talking this as a man of science, a great intellectual, a great person who can advise us, who can advise the students, who can advise the colleagues with her great knowledge. Once again, I'm so thankful to you to be with us here today, and hope to see you more often in Bahçeşehir University, because as I said, inshallah, when she set up her life, the next phase of her life, hopefully we are going to be working more often with Madam Minister. Thank you very much once again to be with us here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and I wish you still a blessed Ramadan, and very much looking forward, inshallah, to really see each other from face to face. And warm regards to the Bosporus. Best regards to Istanbul. Thank you very much.
Inshallah, we will go to a dinner, lunch for days and days, but let us open one. Let us open
a moment of normal life. And,
inshallah.
Yeah. All the very best. Yeah.
One last question to our students tonight from YouTube. They listened us. They ask a lot of quality questions. I'm so thankful to them. Great questions. And as I said, Foreign Minister Kneissl is going to be with us a lot more in the upcoming days. But let us pray, let us hope that this terrible thing, the COVID-19 gets out of our life as soon as possible, and we will return back to normal and hopefully do this lecture face-to-face in Bahçeşehir University in the class. So till next time, have a great night.
And warm regards to Tukshe, Aslan, and to Mustafa. Thank you also for the cooperation.
I will let them know. Thank you, madam.
Bye-bye. Good night.